Good day everyone, my name is Kyla Regina B. Perohan and together with my partner Ms. Olasemen Orecasi, we will be discussing to you the Chapter 14, the Philippine-American War on 1899 to 1902. I will be discussing to you the first 4 chapter and Ms. Erica will be discussing the rest to the next video. So let's start. Contrary to the expectation of the Americans, the occupation of the Philippines and its control took more time and violence to accomplish. The Filipinos, though lacking in arms and munition, fought valiantly throughout the country. As Mariano Santos, a veteran of the Revolution of 1896 and the Philippine-American War recalled when interviewed in 1976 at the age of 101, he then stated that, "Nang dumating ang mga Amerikano, tubig lamang at lupa ang hindi nila dala. Armas, pagkain, gamot, kasuotan, mga kabayo at hagol, halos lahat na. Ngunit, hindi kami natakot sa kanila. Nasindak lang sa kanilang dami at armas. Matapang ang mga Filipino noon." The motives of the American. The colonial motives of the United States over the Philippines were economic, politics, military, and religious. Aguinaldo and the Revolutionary Army in Malolos, whose by then were convinced of American takeover, prepared for war. The Filipinos, facing a fully equipped and trained army for conventional warfare, were badly beaten. But the Filipinos were able to sustain the resistance through guerrilla warfare. The U.S. responded with repressive and violent measures to end the war, using water cure, reconcentration, and scorched earth tactics. The people, threatened by starvation and disease that were related to the war, opted for peace. The Benevolent Assimilation Proclamation. Before the signing of the Treaty of Paris, President McKinley said he did not know what to do with the Philippines. He added that one night he fell on his knees to pray to God to enlighten him on what to do with the Philippines, but he was surrounded by men who had interest in making the Philippines an American colony. These people, representing pressure groups, were: first, the American business whose interests include the Philippines not as only the market for American products, but also a stepping stone to Asia's markets. Second, the military and naval pressure group who wanted the Philippines as base for American ships and as first lines of defense. Lastly, the religious pressure group who wanted the Philippines as a base for Protestant missionaries. All these pressure groups worked hard to make the Philippines as American colony. The American policy. After the signing of the Treaty of Paris, President McKinley issued the so-called Benevolent Assimilation Proclamation. For the first time, McKinley officially announced the American policy regarding the Philippines. It clearly indicates the intention of the United States to exercise sovereignty over the entire Philippines, making it a United States colony. At the same time, the proclamation ordered the American military commanders in the Philippines to extend American sovereignty over the entire archipelago by force. General Alwell Otis, who succeeded General Merritt, did not publish the full text for McKinley proclamation for fear of arousing the anger of the Filipinos. Instead, he changed some words to soften the language of the proclamation so as not to antagonize the people. Filipino reaction to the proclamation. Unfortunately for General Otis, General Marcos P. Miller, who was in Iloilo, published the original text of the proclamation. Copies of this unchanged version fell into the hands of Filipinos. Antonio Luna, editor of La Independencia, attacked the proclamation severely and said it was to trick Filipino people quit. Later on, Luna added that the Americans would put into practice what the Spaniards had done in the Philippines. On the January 5, 1899, Aguinaldo issued a strongly worded proclamation saying that my government is disposed to open hostilities if the American troops attempt to make forcible possession of the Visayan Islands. Otis realized the meaning of Aguinaldo's proclamation, quietly strengthened the American lines as the Filipino-American relation entered a critical stage. Attempt to relax the tension. Aguinaldo knew very well that a war with United States would bring hardship and suffering to the people. He tried to relax the tension by suggesting to Otis what the representative should meet to discuss way and means of avoiding a conflict. Consequently, Otis appointed his representative, which were composed of 3 military officers. Aguinaldo also appointed his 3 representatives. The 6 representatives met for almost a month in January, but nothing came out of the meetings because the American representatives were stalling, which heightened the tension of the two panels. The shot that started the war. On February 1, 1899, a group of American engineers was arrested by Filipino troops. Otis protested, but Aguinaldo replied that the Americans were not arrested but merely detained because they were found within the Filipino lines. On February 4, General MacArthur protested the presence of some Filipino soldiers within the American line. The Filipino withdrew and MacArthur was satisfied. On the night of January 4, 1899, Private Willie W. Grayson shot a Filipino soldier on the corner of Sosiego and Silencio Street in Santa Mesa, Manila. The Filipinos answered with fire, and the American-Filipino War was on. Within an hour, all Americans' units were effectively deployed and mobilized throughout Manila and the suburbs. The incident investigated. That night, Captain Fernando Gray sent a telegram to Malolos saying that the Americans had commenced hostilities. The Filipino commander of the sector where the firing started was in Malolos together with the officers attending a dance. Aguinaldo sent an emissary to inform Otis that the firing of our side that night before had been against my order. But Otis hotly and arrogant said that the fighting having started must go on to the grim end. On the other hand, the American commander, Otis, did not attempt to make any investigation. Instead, he ordered an all-out attack against the Filipino troops everywhere. The American drive to the north. The Battle of La Luma. Earlier in the north of Manila, the Americans won victories in the Battle of La Luma, near the Chinese cemetery, where Major Jose Torres Bogallon died in combat. With La Luma in his hands, MacArthur proceeded to Caloocan, where he was met by General Antonio Luna's force. In the battle that ensued, Luna was defeated. The superior arms of the American could not be neutralized by bravery and courage alone. Luna then planned to recapture Manila. On March 22, he led the attack on the city. 2 days later, he reached Azcárraga Street. The Americans realized the significance of Luna's victories in his sector, fought hard, and succeeded in forcing the intrepid Antonio Luna to retreat to Bulacan. The Battle of Pulo. On March 25, the Filipino troop repulsed General Lloyd Whitton on the Battle of Pulo and killed an American colonel. In Quega, now Plaredal, Major Bell of the American cavalry was killed in combat with the troop led by Boy General Gregorio del Pilar. In the battle fought in April 23, General Stauffenberg was killed. Battle of San Mateo. On December 18, General Licerio Hieronymus' group defeated the Americans under General Lawton in the Battle of San Mateo. General Lawton was killed in the battle. The Battle of Bagbag. The capture of Malolos by MacArthur led General Luna to retreat farther north of Luzon. He established his headquarters in Calumpit, the town immediately north of Malolos. Here he prepared his defense against the Americans who were pursuing him. Luna sent a telegram to General Thomas Moscardo in Guagua asking for reinforcement. Sadly, General Thomas Moscardo, who was under Luna's jurisdiction, refused. This angered Luna and ordered his officer to leave for Guagua to punish Moscardo. He brought with him the artillery unit and cavalry and the unit of the infantry. During Luna's absence, General Gregorio del Pilar commanded the sector of Bagbag, a barrio at Calumpit. The Americans swarmed all over the place and defeated del Pilar. When Luna returned to Calumpit at twilight, the Americans had already captured a large portion of the town. Luna retreated farther north to Pampanga and made preparation to meet the advancing enemy. The fall of Mabini cabinet. In this picture, we can see Apolinario Mabini, who was at that time the former Prime Minister of the Philippines. Facts about him is that Mabini is the next most powerful man in the country after Aguinaldo. He was president of the cabinet and such. He was prime minister. He was also a secretary of foreign affairs. Aguinaldo depended on him because he was honest, hardworking, and incorruptible. He never used his position to enrich himself in office. He was poor when he entered the government service, and he was very poor when he died. When the Americans tried to win over the Filipinos by promising them freedom and autonomy, Mabini said this was the trick of the enemy. He was first the independence of the Philippines. He would not accept anything less than independence. However, his enemies like Pedro A. Paterno, Ambrosio Rianzares Bautista, Felipe Buoncameno, and many others who belonged to the wealthy and powerful, opposed him. They believed that autonomy would be good to Filipinos, so they accepted the American offer of autonomy. Since the group knew that Mabini was opposed to their view, they persuaded Aguinaldo to remove Mabini from office. On May 7, Aguinaldo informed Mabini that Paterno was forming a new cabinet. Mabini knew what it meant, so he sent a resignation for the entire cabinet he was heading. Mabini spent his last year in his armchair writing articles against the Americans and his memoir of the Philippine struggle for independence. The assassination of Luna. So in this picture, we could see Antonio Luna, the Filipino general. Facts about Antonio Luna. General Antonio Luna was the most brilliant among the military officers, belonging to an educated and wealthy family of Ilocos Norte. Luna, however, was born in Manila, in the district known as San Nicolas. He studied pharmacy in Manila and in Spain, where he identified himself with the propagandist. He was also a good writer in Spanish. He had one defect, which the members of the Luna family have in common. He was short-tempered. He was exiled to Spain by the colonial government, and on his way back to the Philippines in 1898, he passed by Hong Kong. He asked Felipe Agoncillo, a family friend, to give him a letter of recommendation for General Aguinaldo. Agoncillo gave him the necessary recommendation and a revolver. Aguinaldo recognized his brilliance and appointed him to a high position in the army. Luna saw that the army had no discipline in the army. But the common soldier, particularly the Kawit regiment, did not like him for it. They refused to take order from him. When the Filipino-American War broke out, Luna was the chief of the military zone. That included many provinces of central Luzon. He made many enemies because of his short-tempered. He slapped Felipe Buangcameno, Aguinaldo's secretary for foreign affairs, who disagreed with him. Luna's strong opposition to any negotiation or compromise with the Americans. He also used to slap soldiers due to their inefficiency or if they failed to meet his standard. While he was in Bayambang, Pangasinan, inspecting the defense against the advancing Americans, he received a telegram from Cabanatuan saying that he was wanted there. So he went there with his aide, Colonel Francisco Roman, and some soldiers. When he reached Aguinaldo's headquarters in Cabanatuan of June 5, 1899 and did not find the president there, he got angry. Then he heard a rifle shot, rushed downstairs, cursed the soldiers, and slapped one of them. The captain named Pendon Castilla for Cavite hacked Luna with a bolo. The other soldiers, seeing that he was wounded, started hacking him as well as with other bolos. Some even fired gunshots at him. Luna drew his revolver but fell out the convent and died saying, "Coward, assassins." He died with more than 40 wounds in his body and head. So that ends my discussion for the first 4 topic of the chapter 14, the Filipino-American War. So my partner, Ms. Erica Alasiman, will be discussing the rest to the next video. Thank you so much for listening.